What's up, guys? So, got here Walkabout 4K. Let's get into it here. So, this is one of the first titles that I got from the sale just because I really wanted to watch it. Walkabout's one of my favorite films, my favorite Nick Roeg film, one of the best films of the 1970s, one of the best films about life, in my opinion. I'll be able to bring those thoughts to the forefront here. So, I'll get into it first. There is so the first film that was made by Nick Roeg was with Donald Cammell in performance. Now that film kind of went to the wayside. Warner Brothers had no clue what to do with it, so it sat out on the shelves for 2 years, and then finally it was given a limited release. And once that occurred, Nick Roeg was sort of in the wings, really not knowing what to do. So eventually he comes across this book called Walkabout, thought it was great and the ideas, and then he decided to adapt it, which of course we're talking about now. So I don't know where to begin because this is one of my favorite films. So I'll start with like the technical aspects of it. So, well, first off, what's the story? What is Walkabout about? Walkabout, it's about two kids that are stranded in this Australian outback, the bush, because their father tried to kill them. Spoiler alert. But ends up killing himself. So these children are sort of out there in this complete nature where it intends to swallow them up, right? But eventually they come across this boy, this Aborigines boy, who's on his walkabout and his own personal journey. He was never named in the film, I believe, but his name in real life was David Gulpilil. And he's absolutely excellent as this Aborigines kid. And the kids end up leaning on him for shelter, but then they eventually sort of overwhelm, not them, but what they embody, I guess, overwhelm David Gulpilil to a point where things turn tragic. So that is basically like what the synopsis of Walkabout is. I know a lot of people won't find that to be a very happy film experience, but I think it's a joyous one in some weird way, and I'll be able to explain further. So the technical aspects, well, the acting I think is great. I butcher her name, and I do apologize. Jenny Agutter. She was great as the not overbearing, but just this protective older sister that's trying to lead them out of this complete disaster of a situation. Luke Roeg, Nick Roeg's little son, he plays the part pretty well. There's also David Gulpilil's performance, I think, brings it all together because he is the main emotional core of the film, whereas he's reacting to all these things around him. He's still a happy child, but in the end, it eventually evolves into something a lot more deeper and a lot more dark. And I'll be able to probably spoil the whole entire film later on. So the other thing about it that I really love, of course, is the cinematography, the beauty of the Australian outback, the beauty of these cavernous, these sort of like ponds where they swim in are just beautiful. I don't know what they are like geography wise when it comes to like Australia, where they're at, because I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of like an American idiot, right? I just think that Australia is just mainly just like mostly desert is like half of it, and the other half is like nice, like Sydney and great coral reef or whatever. But Walkabout is a beautiful work of art in terms of like cinematography. Editing is definitely one of the bigger strengths here. In every Nick Roeg film, the editing is just completely not out of left field, but it's like kind of crazy, right? So this, I'm trying to think. There's a lot to tackle. So I guess we'll get into like really the story of it first, and then I'll just be able to tell you how the 4K is, since this is what you guys probably wanted to hear. So the story of Walkabout and why I really like it is because it kind of brings together this whole notion that nature is this sort of like uncorrupted, kind of this determinate sort of thing that we see, but it takes man to basically overcome and to destroy it and to sap every life and to sap to kind of take it all and to try to dominate and destroy it, right? I think that to look at this film in that way is kind of a mistake, even though that there's a lot of messages in this film that would kind of come off as pessimistic. So, and I'll just be able to tell you here. A big thing also about the film is communication, which is highlight of this because, of course, David Gopalil does not speak English, right? So when there's two worlds here, one is the bourgeois, the sort of white upper middle class sort of world, and here is nature, whereas the two white kids and David Gopalil's his whole tribe, his whole world. And once they collide together, it is very clear that one side has basically like the whole entire, they have scientific theory, all this great stuff, whereas nature is sort of just powerless to it, it seems. And whenever you get into the film and as it evolves and as the kids sort of lean on David Gopalil more and more and more, it seems that Gopalil has sort of embraced that sort of protector for them. And the kids only really see him, not the little kid, but Jenny's character, the older daughter, she is so hardwired into trying to get back into civilization that it seems that she is not really aware that there's this good thing almost. But in reality, you kind of want to say, well, she had to go back to her society because that's all she's ever known. That's really, it's almost like just taking someone out of your comfort zone. Like if someone took me out of my home and just threw me out on the streets, which is unfortunately happened to a lot of people, right? I don't mean to say that stupidly, but that has happened and it's horrible. It's almost like, and especially for like little children, it's absolutely horrible. If you're taken out of a situation when you're like, in your fertile age, it can be absolutely devastating and affect your whole worldview, right? So, so whenever it comes to her character, she's already hardwired, already kind of like, I'm just trying to get back to civilization and try to get my brother out of this. Whereas David Gopalil is almost the opposite. He kind of wants them to stay. And so you kind of get this whole tragic scenario of where almost like modern society is going to dominate nature no matter what. And so as really as closer as they get to society, the communication eventually becomes more succinct. And a key scene in really the climax of the film, Gopalil's character eventually comes up to Jenny and says, and Jenny says, "Oh, can you get this for me?" And then he eventually goes, "Water." And that's like the first, first means of communication that he's trying to convey to Jenny to try to come to some sort of like level. Whereas it really was like this power thing. He is trying to come to some sort of like, I want to try to understand, and I honestly ended up wanting to be with this person. So when we get to where he does his mating dance, which is tragic. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's also just like this very sad part of the film where eventually he does this ceremonial like basically like a marriage / mating dance, and Jenny's character just totally no, I don't think so. That's not happening. And he eventually becomes depressed and of course just offs himself because he just doesn't really understand that someone can just shun him like that, because that's how he professes his love and eventually like his dedication. And if that's like totally torn away, then what else is there left? So it's very sad. And the ending, I think, is very poignant because Jenny becomes an adult, and while she's with her, I think her husband, she dreams, or at least like thinks, to a time where her and her brother were with David Gopalil in this sort of I don't know, oasis. I don't know what to call it, but they're there, and it's sort of like this very innocent moment, and she sees it as that. And so whenever we get to this this ending, it's sort of like, well, she understands and sort of knows that this is going on, that this whole thing of like this road that you go down may not have been the road for you, but you still remember it fondly, and that's all that she sees it as, right? So this movie is really twofold. One, that almost nature can never really overcome what this modernization of what we've kind of helped to destroy. And the second thing is that communication is the absolute key to life and understanding. It's not just this conceptual, I guess, awareness of you have to go in and and take in the world and sort of be like cast off on your own and be a hermit or whatever like that. It has always been about communication, and has always been about trying to, reach and understand people. But when you're not ready to take that on, and eventually the end culminates in nature's sort of last gasp in this person. So I guess so that those ramblings to me, I guess, are what Walkabout is. It's not like a fully formed picture in my head, but those are at least like some of like the sort of ideas that I sort of bring out. And it's an absolute wonderful movie. So if I didn't totally ruin it for you, then go ahead and watch it. So I'll probably put a spoiler disclaimer, but anyway, so I'll get into the image. So the Blu-ray that came out in 2010 was pretty good. Nick Roeg had did the color timing on this, and it was approved by him. And I thought it was pretty serviceable. There was some rooms for improvement whenever it comes to the darks, and this film has a very rough, organic quality to it, and there's really not a whole lot to say. This isn't like Lawrence of Arabia where it's like 65 millimeter whatever. This is just like a very, not a basic film because it is beautiful, but it's kind of like rough around the edges. So when the 4K was announced, I really didn't think they could really improve on the Blu-ray because I thought it was already good looking enough. But I will report that I was wrong. Well, at least in some areas. So when we get to the so I will say the darker parts of this film, I think they are totally just awesome whenever it comes to the Dolby Vision. The Dolby Vision totally just makes these darks just beautiful. They don't pop like, and just like, I don't know. I don't even know Wizard of Oz, like these Technicolor marvels, but they do look better than the Blu-ray, I think. And where it really kind of gets like kind of rough is when you go into the desert sections of the film. Those were pretty rough, and I don't know if it was, and I don't notice like compression and all that stuff very much in really anything, like unless I'm like taking a magnifying glass and looking at it. I'm really not going to give a shit about that. But for some reason, and I don't know why, when David Gopalil's character comes in and sort of just comes into the frame or whatever, and he has the lizards on his waist, the redness or the copper of the sand to me like had this sort of like weird effect. So I don't know necessarily as far as, of what really happened there. Now there's a couple of scenes that were like that just totally was just like, what's going on? And there's some sentiments out there that's just like, this is like a pretty bad encoded 4K. And yeah, there were some scenes where I was just like, man, I don't know what's going on. But the dark parts of it, I think, are absolutely just, they just totally obliterate the Blu-ray for me, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. So it's a weird bag, this 4K, although I would overall recommend it. And that's why I would recommend the 4K, just because, and also the old Blu-ray has like a bronzing effect, which if you put it in and if you play it for a long time, then it's possible that it just will not play any longer. But with that being said, it might have already been replaced. I think they already did a replacement on that about almost like 13 years ago. Oh my God. Man, I feel old, man, but I'm getting gray hair already. So, anyway, get the 4K. I think it's worth it, even though that there are some spots that are kind of rough. This also has the same special features as the Blu-ray, which includes a great commentary from Roeg and Jenny. Like, they're both on here. Also, Gopalil won Red Blood, which is a 1-hour documentary on the life and career of David Gopalil. Rest in peace. So I would just recommend this one. It's one of my favorite films of all time. Those ramblings about the film will probably be fully fleshed out in another video because there's a lot more to say on Walkabout than just this one semi-humble reviewer's opinions or whatever. But anyway, that's about it. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Don't Look Now is next. So that one's going to be a barn burner, I guess. But thank you so much for watching again. Have a great day. Like, subscribe, whatever. Thank you.